Hey everybody, welcome to another episode. Here with a very special guest, Dr. Courtney Gowin,
Hi, everybody.
owner of the Nest here in Addison.
Mhm.
She's a pediatric and maternal health specialist, a doctor of chiropractic, also the founder of Wonderlearn, and I just learned now, also getting into commercial real estate, and she has a book coming out. So we have a lot to talk about. I thought we just had a couple things. Now we had the book and the commercial real estate.
It's crazy, right? I never sleep. This is why. And I'm a single mom to 3 kids. So I literally am always on the go creating.
This is the exciting part. So single mom, there's no excuse. You can create and still
Absolutely.
no
Yeah.
excuse. That's the best part is just seeing people, and that's kind of when did we kind of reengage? A year and a half ago.
Probably a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Always kind of appreciated you from afar. I think we were maybe a year or two apart, or
In school. And we were in school together.
When did you graduate?
2013.
Okay, so like a year and a bit apart.
Okay. Yeah.
But she's always just. Were your parents chiropractors?
No, they were coaches.
Coaches
And
okay.
cattle farmers, actually.
Cattle farm. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is, but you could always just tell like very good at speaking, kind of like just and again, so it saw you on social media and then the Wonderlearn stuff and always had this appreciation from afar. Like as an entrepreneur, could appreciate. And I think, on a podcast front, I think, our podcast is health, wealth, and the ultimate self. So it's not just about health, it's about if you want to be an entrepreneur, if there's something that you really want to do, just nothing should hold you back.
No.
And I think that's the cool part is like here you are, not only is it, you have your healthcare in your office, you have your Wonderlearn, which is another kind of still healthcare.
It funds my travel habit. Let's get real.
But it allows you to live in it and see the world.
Yeah, it is.
And again, I think that's the part where people will like, oh, I'd love to do that. And they just can't formulate a way to make it a business.
Right.
And then they never do it. And then they're kind of like sitting there with regret.
That's why I built the platform so other people can do it too.
That's awesome. And we'll talk about
it's
that.
So fun.
And now the commercial real estate, which we'll get into. So let's start with the Nest. So
yeah.
As a chiropractor, pediatric chiropractor, what's your patient base? You see moms, everybody?
The best time. So I took a week off and I went to London for 5 days to celebrate my birthday, which was a time of my life. But when I got back, I went into the office yesterday and I was just the happiest person in the world. Because, whenever you get back into your patients and your patient flow, I just laugh throughout the day because I'm like, this does not feel like real life. I hold babies all day long. We see pregnant women. We laugh. It feels almost like a little, like a hair salon. Like we love our patients so much. So it's
social,
fabulous.
Engaging,
it's so fun.
Friendly.
And so I think that environment really leads itself to like very happy life. We're about 90% prenatal and pediatric, and then we've just brought on a male doctor, and so our husband population is starting to come up a little bit. But I will say, like, I was at dinner. I was in a networking dinner, and there was all these investors, and they were just in their suits and ties, and their yachts, and their boats, and their planes. They were talking about, and I was a little bit late always, and I sat down at the table. And they're like, well, Courtney, how was your day? And I was like, oh, it was magical. And they all looked at each other like, I don't think we've ever had a magical day. And I was like, you guys aren't doing it right. I'm sorry. I called them out on it.
Well, I think that's it. For us, so many, especially you see people coming in, whether it's moms, the dads, you see people like working so hard to not necessarily enjoy the day-to-day life. And it's just like, that's kind of part of it. It's like you need to do what your calling is, because then when you do it, doesn't feel like work.
Absolutely. And I always say I never work a day in my life. We work long hours as entrepreneurs, but it is everything that I do is in alignment with my true life vision of what I want in life. So
that's the cool part. And again, and that's part of the mission with this podcast is just whether it's health related, whether it's
which I love that you're doing this. This is so cool.
Again, we've had patients for a while, which again, you're writing a book like, oh, you guys should write a book. This was kind of our first kind of foray into kind of having some type of platform to help kind of get whether it's educational, motivational kind of pieces out. But again, I think that's the biggest piece is like if you have something that you love doing, find a way to make it a living. And again, it won't feel like work. It may be hard work, but it will not feel super stressful. It may be a little bit when it gets launched, but at the end of the day, it'll be worth it.
I always live by the be, do, have principle.
Okay.
Be who you want to be, do what you want to have what you want to have. And so whenever you find alignment in those 3 areas, it really creates something magical, because everything that doesn't align with who you want to be, what you want to do, and what you want to have, it usually is a distraction. But
Mhm.
whenever you're so clear in those three areas, it tends to line up.
So how do you have any exercises around that? Like, do you have a vision board? Do you have, like, I know when we talk into like the real estate piece, there's some vision that came in through
Totally,
that,
yeah.
but so I've had people like, hey, pictures of everything you
Right, like
love.
vision
So
board,
so
Pinterest boards, yeah.
yeah, so instead of going on social media for the first 2 minutes of the
Right.
day, and you start thinking about whether it's what other people
Mhm.
have that you don't and you want, and having
Mhm.
a different mindset of like kind of like jealousy,
Yeah.
like wake up, think so clearly,
Mhm.
envision like you and your family in that place or doing what,
100%.
which
Yes.
like that makes sense. Like water what you want to grow,
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
not what you don't want to grow. Um, so in that principle, do you have any exercises that you use that with, like
Yeah.
on a daily basis? Is this a weekly thing you kind of have that, or is it like your mantra, like constantly walking
Mhm.
around?
I was watching this thing the other day. It was talking about your vibration and manifestation. And that's something like I love Jesus, I'm a believer, but I do feel like there's a frequency that we do vibrate
Mhm.
at, and it's a cycle. And so I feel like whenever you are on this really high vibration of life, you're going to attract a lot of
Mhm.
opportunities. And I think a lot about what you do is clearing out the physical part. So that's not a distraction. When you feel good, your vibration is going to be so much better. Whenever you start your day with a meditation, with a prayer, with cold plunge, like I don't know what your morning routine is, but
Cold plunges get harder in Texas this time of year.
yeah. And so whenever you start your day in that energy, it's really important. But I always have a high level of accountability in my life. So I have life coaches, and one took me through a meditation that completely changed my life. And he took me through this entire meditation. And at the end, I was sitting on the beach in Costa Rica, looking across a fire at the version of myself in 10 years.
Mhm.
And something about that just completely clicked, is I saw so clearly what I wanted and who I wanted to
Mhm.
be in 10 years, in a marriage, a relationship, my kids, my travel, my business. I knew exactly what I wanted. And it was that clarity that allowed my daily rhythms and my daily habits to kind of form and through that. So, and it was something that I realized that if anything is not aligned with that version of myself, I don't do it.
Mhm.
And so it's a good litmus test
So
of everything.
I had a really good mentor, kind of somebody in my life, like you
Mhm.
should say no more often than you say
Oh,
yes.
and then I was such a yes person.
Mhm.
I was like, yes, I'll do this for you. Yes, I'll do this for you. But once I started saying, no, this doesn't align with my time or the
Mhm.
experience that I want on this earth, then it got a lot more fun.
It's what's like as a business owner, like you want to say yes to everything,
Yeah.
right? Because you think you have to be like please everybody.
Mhm.
And then again, as a business owner, it could be very stressful because if you
Yeah.
start saying yes or overextending yourself to things
Mhm.
that don't fulfill you, then again, something you might love actually starts to become something like that's exhausting
And
or
it
it's more
lowers your
stressful.
vibrational
Lowers
energy,
your
and
vibration,
you
right?
don't get to create and build.
Well, and that's it. And it's very easy when you start to see those things. You can also, I mean, there's times where you feel like you're around people like, oh, like you feel
You
like the
feel it.
vibration, like
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
hitting, and you're like,
It's a neuroception. I
yeah.
love this. And I think that babies, they have a really innate neuroception of whenever they look at you, they interact with you. Like I work with kids all day long.
Mhm.
And so I've seen this in play. Somebody brought it up to me and I was like, oh my gosh, that is exactly what it is. It's that instinctual feeling of energy whenever you're around somebody.
It's interesting because probably it was like 6 months ago, 8 months ago,
Mhm.
like kind of going into like rabbit holes of like vibrational frequencies.
Which
So
do you think this is what the podcast is going to be about?
no, it didn't really. I'm like,
Let's
okay.
go.
So I'm like, hey, what hurts? Like, is there an energy vibrational frequency to our mitochondria, to different cell
Absolutely.
structures?
Yeah.
And I'm like, but again, for my brain, it's like, I want the research, I want the data, because I'm like, to
Mhm.
me, this is, how do we take something that might seem more spiritual
Of course.
and make it really like, hey, look, like, it's not poo poo.
It's
There's a
science.
reason, right?
Exactly.
Because again, I think there's so like sound bowl and having
Mhm.
that like why do people gravitate to music, right? Why does
Mhm.
it bring out emotional things, motivational things? I know if I want to work out and like run through a brick wall and play lacrosse,
Music's going to be a
I
big
have
part of it. Yeah.
my playlist. Like, why was sound so important?
Yeah.
And yeah, the lyrics were important, but it wasn't. Like, I was never a lyric like,
Mhm.
hey, it'd be cool if like they like brought a memory back
Yeah.
because of like, hey, this song, like there's a band called the Tragically Hip. That's probably the only band that has enough about it. But they're a Canadian band, but it's still, it was bring me back to growing up around the Great Lakes. Like that's kind of how you feel. But most of the time, it is like the rhythm and the music is what kind of instills
Of course, yeah.
a mood, a motivation, and again, and that's what I'm like. So to say that music vibration has no kind of bearing on physical aspects, that's what I'm going down this rabbit hole to try to prove it. And again, you kind of get bounced off. I'm like, okay, this is like a rabbit hole. I'm like, how do I find like mitochondrial like energy, the resting hertz?
Well, the people that are doing frequency healing now, and I think that's super interesting as well.
Because what is it, 7 point some odd hertz is like the kind of the Earth's frequency, and you talk about grounding and how it's important to kind of ground. We wear rubber soles all day on synthetic floors, and we never really touch the actual like Earth and get grounded. And people are using grounding in their vegetable garden beds to like grounding their mattress. So at least when they sleep at night, they have copper wire helping them ground. And that was kind of this aspect, like it makes a ton of sense because we would like talk to patients about like, you know what, I do well when I ground.
Get outside.
Talking about
go to Maui.
Talking about Maui, it's like going to somewhere, whether it's a beach, like instantaneous. It's just like you're literally in the transforms.
Your
like
whole cellular makeup changes.
Right, and you know, I have a buddy who's got property up a few hours north in Oklahoma. Same thing up there. Like all you hear are trees just swaying side to side. But for me, there's something like there is in vibration or an energy that's just like takes me down a notch. Like I can sit here and stay.
It's so beautiful, yeah.
And again, so it's like, and so for me, I'm like, you know, kind of getting to this like the hertz and the resting kind of vibration of the earth and kind of how our health aligns better when it's at that hertz. And that's where I was like, okay, well, what's the resting hertz of like mitochondria and like different cell structures? So to be continued.
You could be a whole podcast on that.
I started, I'm like, where do I find this information? It's not like,
exactly.
It's not in the journal of endocrinology, but it's like, so it's like, anyway, so that's a whole other aspect. But so when you're in pediatric maternal health in terms of like the day-to-day aspects of your practice, were you influenced to go into that? Were you a kid that went to the chiropractor?
I wish. Oh my gosh, I wish I was a chiro kid. I was always so jealous of my friends that were adjusted from birth. But I actually found chiropractic through a sports injury. And so I was a D1 basketball player, had a career-ending injury, and then I was able to find chiropractic.
So you could be in Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, pretty much. Catch me at Lifetime in the men's league. But no, it saved me. And my entire time at school, I thought I was going to be a sports chiropractor until I found an amazing mentor. And then I had 3 home births and have raised my children in this chiropractic lifestyle. And it's so powerful not to share with people. And I think that whenever you connect with something that is truth and it resonates with you, especially the chiropractic philosophy of health comes from the inside out, all you need to do is amplify it. Like that really resonated. And then the way that I raise my kids is really congruent with that. And then to see it working for the past 9 years, you're like, wow, this really does work. It's amazing. And being able to share that with other people in a culture where our kids are so sick, like a chronic disease in children is on the rise.
Chronic disease, like from a
But you see it in adults too,
1 to 2% per year it increases, yet we spend more and more money at it, right? And that's my biggest thing in terms of our kind of driving force is like our current approach to do anything on chronic disease is missing the mark. So doesn't make sense.
You have to start in childhood, and this is the first generation that's not outliving their parents. Like we need to stop and realize 1 in 6 kids have autism. This generation's not outliving our parents, and so there's something has to change.
Autoimmune disease like up 400%. Like again, it's like what
400%
since the 90s. I think that was the stat, and again, that was probably years ago too.
Oh my gosh!
But you think of like the autism, like 1 in 10,000, 1 in 1,000, 1 in 100, 1 in 88, 1 in 36, 1 in 18.
Of course,
and it's just like
terrifying.
It's like, hey, again, as providers, like, how do you not step back and be like, holy smokes.
Something we're doing is not working.
We're missing the mark. Like either we're doing something that's making it worse, or we're doing things that yield no response. And I think that's the part in our philosophy is like, how do you just live in kind of like alignment with what does the body need?
Exactly.
Right? not, okay, we need to add this in. It's like, hey, what does the body need to just take care of
And a lot of
itself?
times it's what do we need to take away? Like, what's that thing that we need to like
The iPad,
honor?
like, staring
Yeah,
at
exactly.
the Nintendo, the
Uh,
TV screen, like,
the stress,
yeah, the stress.
everything.
Well, I think that's it, is like, which is really interesting, because like the third concept, when you start telling me about that, which we'll talk on, I'm like, this is it's something I'm like, goes into like the whole
Mhm.
maternal like support thing, and yeah, we'll save that, because
Okay.
I think it's powerful.
Just tell me when I'm ready to go down the rabbit hole.
Let's jump in. We'll jump in out of order. Um,
I'm probably the worst
so
podcast guest. I'm
no,
sorry.
you're good. She's told me, as you were about to start recording, that she's gonna go in and she's got commercial real estate now she's working in,
Mhm.
which is awesome. It's like, hey, doing things that you're passionate. So, tell me, how did you get into commercial real estate? You had a vision.
I had a vision. But I think honestly, whenever you want to make big changes, you have to do things on a big scale.
Mhm.
And for me, that's daily living. And in the maternal health aspect, I've worked a lot of big projects with Harvard, the Vatican. Like I've been called into these
Mhm.
like amazing scenarios, and I've been able to sit with people that are really trying to solve these issues. Like the maternal health landscape in the US is one of the worst in the world. Like this
Is
is
it
one of the most dangerous places to give birth in a civilized
worse than
country.
Cuba?
Yeah, exactly. So it's really getting a lot of money and a lot of attention, but a lot of the things that we found that were missing was community-based care and then wisdom. And so we're missing the wisdom of our elders. And so I really just sat with this and I just meditated with it. I was like, what is something you can't segregate your life from healthcare.
Mhm.
And so I really dove in and developed a well living concept in real estate. And so that has an intergenerational aspect to it.
Mhm.
So we were talking about Magnolia. I love Magnolia. I always go down to Chip and Joanna.
My wife also loves it.
And so whenever I was there, it was really beautiful to experience that nobody's on their phones, kids are running around, like it's a really community
You got
based
food, you got
project.
kind
Yeah,
of, it's
exactly.
equal.
So I said, how can we do this? And then it's a wellness experience that provides community to a city.
Mhm.
Because if you change a city, you can start changing the family.
Mhm.
And so I just had a big meeting today with the city and the mayor and the developers, and they asked me, they're like, "Are you going to get your liquor license?" And I said, "Absolutely not. This is a wellness-based
Yeah.
development, and we'll have non-alcoholic
Well,
cocktails."
but 2 glasses of wine a day is okay.
Which is fine. But at the same time, so I had this really, really intense vision that I was able to write down on a napkin, drew it out, and then I basically went way too early to gymnastics with my daughters, went to a coffee shop, parked, saw the land, and the concept just came alive. And I was like, this is it. And so this could be a whole podcast. I'm sorry, but
Yeah, I think it's just interesting.
and so for a long, this is a 2 years in the making, I found the guy that owned that land and I knocked on his door one night in November 2 years ago. And I was like, hey, he was like, who are you? And I was like, I want to talk to you about this land. I was like, I saw this vision of my project on this land. And he's like, it's not for sale. I was like, I know, but will you have coffee with me?
Yeah.
And so 6 months after I knocked on his door, he called me. He was like, I'm ready to have coffee with you. And it just so turned out that he is like from a trust fund. And he was like, I just really want purpose to be able to contribute to a cause for women and children. I was like, well, I got one for you right here. And so it's been a lot of synchronicities of I've had the investor actually flew in and she is investing in projects in Richardson. She invests all over the world.
Of all
And her
places.
number one was Richardson. And so she walked the land, loved it, fully funded it on site.
That's
And
awesome.
then the biggest hurdle was the city. Like, how
Mhm.
do I even get into the city? And my dad called me one day and he was like, you'll never believe who I just had lunch with, who was one of my best friends. It was the mayor of Richardson. So
Tell you, like, you
it's
put the
been
vibration in the energy
beautiful.
out.
And I just got the call this morning. The land is adjacent to these apartments, and the concept brings in intergenerational. So we have really curated an environment. So if you think about all the things that women love, so
Mhm.
pedicures, glow outs, plant shops, chiropractic, massage, spa, like very wellness,
Mhm.
family oriented businesses, coffee shop. And you also have this active senior living that's adjacent to the property. And so you curate a community garden that's going to be in the project, chicken coop, like this whole thing that feels very down to earth. very community focused, and you also integrate the elders into programs like story time. You have them sit with babies and newborns as these mothers are getting their services and taking
Mhm.
care of them. So it becomes an ecosystem of
Mhm.
real estate development. So
I think it's when you mention it, Mike, that is a great kind of idea because I think if we go back 100 years ago and you just look at
mhm,
like, again kind of the whole premise of maternal health and like having a baby in this country is worse
mhm.
than Cuba.
Yeah,
You're like, what has gone on to do that?
yeah.
Are we that unhealthy as mothers and
Mhm,
families, or is it our healthcare system doing too much? Like,
mhm,
and I think that's the part is like kind of looking at have we bastardized healthcare in some way,
mhm,
shape, or form, and especially and but again, so going through as a male, I try to be kind of I observe, but going through it, and my wife has had two babies naturally,
mhm.
and listen to mothers that maybe become mothers. And again, I'm like, whatever you want is what's important.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times your birth story is shaped by what your provider wants for you. And I think that's
Mhm,
not fair to women. I think if you think you want to have a natural birth, I think it really irritates me and pisses me off when I'm
mhm.
like, they're feared out of it. Like,
Yeah.
oh, it's gonna be, you
You're
can't
taking
handle.
away the power of these women.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
think that's the part is like, oh, it's so painful, you can't handle it. And I'm like,
Mhm.
why would you ever
God made
say
your
that?
body to do this.
I'm like, and again,
Yeah.
doesn't mean they have to do it, but like the notion that a provider should be able to say that to me is
Mhm,
like, whoa, like if that lady wants to do it naturally, encourage and support her, give her the
mhm.
resources,
Yes,
point her in the
exactly.
right direction versus like, no, no, we're gonna do a C-section. It's
Mhm.
gonna be like, that's the way to go. It's like
Yeah.
you can't handle the birth, you're gonna have an epidural. I'm like,
Mhm,
to me, it's like having seen my wife birth two kids naturally, it's one
mhm.
of the most empowering thing to see her go through it.
Yeah, it really is.
And it's just like, and for her, I can tell you, like, I don't want to say speak in her words, but I'm like, I know for a fact, like, it makes you really like, oh my gosh, like, I
Mhm,
am so strong. Like, I
mhm.
can do that. I can do
You can do
anything.
anything. That's why I do so many things. I'm like, I pushed all these babies out of my own. Yeah.
And there's like a guy on the, on the bench, just kind of, hey, you're
Mhm.
watching. You're like, it's one of the most amazing things
Yeah.
to see. Is
Well, it really like dives into the pure roles of masculine and femininity, where a true man can hold that space and be the protector, while a woman is able to stand up in her full power. You
Mhm.
know, it takes that really safe space for her to allow her body to open and birth a baby.
Absolutely. And then I think too, and going into first
Hmm.
baby,
Yeah.
why would we want to doula there?
Yeah.
Like no, but it comes with your package, and like
Yeah,
you're gonna have it.
exactly.
And then I'm like, but that's kind of what your concept is like
Hmm.
bringing other women around. And I think that's it when you start looking
It's the
through
village.
the
Yeah, we've
village, like
lost our
you
village.
lost the village,
And that's what it's the net wellness village. That's exactly what it
and
is.
that's the part when you said it, I'm like kind of going back, like if you go back to childbirth, and like a lot
Mhm.
of times, like the mother, the grandmother, the great
They were all
grandmother,
there.
all these women would come in to
Yeah,
support the
the
lady going
wisdom
the
was
wisdom.
there. Exactly.
There was such a support structure. So that's why
Mhm,
you talked about like to me, I'm like, this makes so much sense because again, I feel like we're going so far away. It's
mhm.
cold, it's
Yeah,
not as personal,
it's
it's not as empowered.
dehumanized. It's a medical procedure,
It's
and
how
birth
quick.
is not an emergency. It can't be. But at the same time, if we are given the opportunity to have normal physiological births,
Yeah,
then our birth outcomes will skyrocket. But there is a time and place for medical intervention, and thank
absolutely.
God, like we're number one at that.
Well, and I think that's it. There's a time and a place. And I think
Mhm,
I know there's different, was it UK that did a study
mhm,
talking about like, and I think they were kind of recommending like midwives unless there's a high risk
yeah,
because even though like every little like intervention in
mhm,
a kind of hospital based setting might have small risk,
mhm.
when you start to add multiple, the risk accumulates. It's like, which again, it doesn't take a rocket science. Like, well, that just makes sense. Like, oh, we're going to do an epidural, small risk, but don't worry about. We're going to do this thing like C
Yeah, they
sections.
start
Don't
to
worry,
add up.
small risk.
Yeah.
Again, you can start to see how things in risk adds up, and
Mhm.
again, to me, it's again crisis healthcare makes
Of
sense.
course, yeah.
But when you start kind of pushing it on things that really doesn't make sense on, like that's when I'm like, hey, look, like, why is this going on? Why are we doing this? Like, we need to start
Mhm.
asking questions. And I think, your plan for this kind of area up in Richardson just makes a ton of sense because I think you have women that
And
We're in
women
it.
are the number one consumers too. You have to
Correct.
think like if she wants a plant and a coffee, she's gonna get a plant and a coffee.
Tell my
So
wife
we're
to stay away
building
from
all,
purchasing.
I know, we're building all these businesses that are truly focused around things. I'm the avatar, things that I love. I
so
wanna
though.
get my hair done, my nails done, I want my health and wellness. I
Take
want
care of like
everything.
the woman and
Yeah,
everything
but
she
if
wouldn't
you
potentially
have a
care about.
space where your kids can be looked after and cared for, and you feel like you can be at ease and rest and relax, you're gonna be a little bit more happy. Like you're gonna be a lot happier, and you're gonna be more connected to the community.
Oh,
as well,
absolutely.
which
I
is
just
important.
think it's a really great idea, and that's pretty cool.
We'll see what happens.
Is there? I mean, again, I know you're just having meetings with the city.
Yeah.
What's kind of like, hey, in 5 years and 3 years, like what would be an
Mm-hmm.
ideal launch, kind of like on the ground and like open?
So we go before where we've put everything, traffic study, all these studies that we've had to go in with our architects and civil engineers. We submit everything July 1st. And everything's been really like a lot of ease, I guess.
Okay.
And then we go before city council for a public hearing where we present to the public for people can come in and hear what we're putting into the city.
That'd be awesome.
And then if we get that approval, then everything has to go through code, things like that. So
When you get your approval.
when
okay.
we get our, yeah, we're gonna
Okay,
manifest
we're gonna
that.
manifest that.
Then we can possibly like break ground by the end of this year.
That's awesome. Man, I know I mean, the idea is awesome, but I know like, there's so much little details that have to happen.
Yeah.
Little-
I think it's true, like you
Red
talk
tape.
about being an entrepreneur, we were talking a little bit about that and your new adventures and things like that is. It's really pushing me, this is the biggest thing I've ever done in my life, and it's pushing me to really say, okay, how much do you believe in this? How much risk are you gonna take? How much are you gonna,
How-
it's like pressing, like it's under
Yeah.
the fire. But that vision within me is so much stronger than that pressure from the outside. I'm like, no, this is going through, it's too strong, the world needs it too much.
Well, it's a very good point, because I think a lot of people will have visions and they're like, well, either they don't visit them enough, they don't continue to like
Yeah.
see more pieces and details to the vision. And the moment something challenging comes up, it's like, I'm off their vision.
Exactly.
And again, as a business owner, there's gonna be challenges. There's gonna be times where like, is this meant to be?
Yeah. Yes.
But again, then you
I
sit
felt
down
like that a lot.
and you have your vision, you're like, no, like I see it. This like
Yeah.
it's so clear in my head, and it kind of gets you back on board. So I think it's one of those things where
What's that quote where when the vision is on the inside is stronger than the problems on the outside, like the road just clears? That's not a quote, but there's something along
I
those
know what you're
lines.
talking about. I don't want to butcher it.
Yeah, I think it's a DeMartini quote, but it's something like whenever your vision is so clear on the inside, everything is just on the way, not in the way. Like we're making our way, we're going.
Well, that's it. It's like, and I think that's where a lot of people like, oh, it just seems so easy. It's like when
Yeah.
people step back and they look
And
like
they see it from
it's
the
not
outside.
it's not necessarily easy.
Mhm.
It's easy because you see the vision. Like that's the easy part. So like all the steps, like yeah, it's tiring, it's exhausting, but you have something.
Mhm.
So it's harder for you to skip the vision, bail on the project, and it's more of like it's just like how I always kind of talk with different with Dr. Nutt, different people like because it comes down to health too. It's like they have this vision of wanting to be healthier. I'm like, all right, you got to do this, you got to change this habit and this habit. It's the same kind of
Hard
thing.
work. Yeah.
But their vision for where they want to be is not strong enough. Then I think a lot of times they also fall off.
It's easier.
It's like, oh, it's just easier to go back to like not exercising, waking up late, and finding like a reason not to go to their their health vision. I see that all the time, which leads me into your next business, Wonderlearn. For years, we talked about, man, if we could only just take somebody out of their environment and plop them somewhere where it's more conducive to kind of clearing and healing. And this is kind of where I saw Courtney, Dr. Gowin here posting about her other business, Wonderlearn. I'm like, basically help lead retreats for different providers, anybody really. And I'm like, man, like, because I've been toying with the idea, like I have a patient who's got like 500-acre property and a couple hours west. Do I do it there? It's like, how do we get people and pull them? How do you take the frog out of the boiling pot of water? And again, so I think if somebody's got a lot of stress going on, like how do you get them to have that campfire experience you had, where they're looking across, they have this big vision. Being in the same environment that's kind of making them stressed out might be very, very hard.
From the rhythms. That's what I tell everybody. You have to remove from your daily rhythms and be completely in a new environment where you're taking everything in a new set of eyes.
Well, and with the right people, with
Yes.
like not the naysayers, like the positive, like you know what I
Mhm.
mean. And that's the part where this your posts and your I saw you launching this business. I'm like, this makes sense.
It's so fun.
I've
Yeah.
been saying this for years. I'm like, oh, we just
And so many people have. Yeah. And it's just the thing that I found is people really love the idea. They just don't know where to start.
Mhm.
And that's something whenever I started hosting retreats 3 years ago, I lost so much money. Like it was something, it was one of those like, is this worth it?
Yeah.
And then I finally figured out the system and how to do this really well. And speaking to entrepreneurs, whenever you want to scale something quickly, build systems.
Oh
And
yeah.
so I built this turnkey system that we're able to just turnkey and create these retreats for entrepreneurs that
Mhm.
are able to 10x their impact, whether the outside of
Yeah.
their four walls, because they're at the beach, they're at the ocean, they're at these amazing places where healing changes. It
Mhm.
really does change.
Well, and again, that was kind of it. It's like I always every time we go on a trip, like God, man, like just your brain changes.
You're more creative. Yeah.
You see things different. Like you can
Yes.
sit down and actually get into like kind of more vision like
Mhm.
times. And I know like this past weekend I was sitting around the group and a guy's turning 40 in my hockey group. He's like, I thought I'd just go away
Yeah.
and by myself. I'm like, do it.
Yes.
Go take 2, 3 days. He's
Absolutely.
like, and again for him, he's like, I don't know if like my wife doesn't like the idea of that. It's like,
Mhm.
why like is it not a family trip? Like, I get it. Like
Mhm.
to me, it's like it's giving yourself the time to hear your thoughts. And again,
Absolutely.
as much as I love my wife and kids, like there's
Mhm.
times where like it might take me 12, it might take me 14 hours to get to the point where I'm like, I can get creative and
You
have
have
those
to be
thoughts come into
so
place.
connected. And I think that's a beautiful thing about, I mean, going through divorce and kind of watching and seeing the past, and like it really showed me like you have to be very complete to
Mhm.
even be with somebody else.
Yeah.
And even when you are in the rhythm of a relationship, investing in that self-care time so you can come back to
Mhm.
your wife and kids and be able to be more connected. I
And
think that's really important too.
what I look at I did it, I had to redo my visa. So I always have to get every 2 years, I have to get a stamp in my passport being Canadian and wanting to be here and happy to be here in the US legally.
Yeah.
I gotta get a stamp in my passport to keep my business, my investor visas like kind of good.
Hmm.
So I'm like, you know what? The last time I didn't do it, I just really flew to Cancun, walked to the Cancun airport, right back to Dallas.
That's funny.
And again, my wife, after she like, the flight was like, why don't you stay for like the night? I would, but I'm like, already kind of, I'm like, so this time going, I'm like, hey, I'm gonna stay for 2 days. So
Yeah.
Cozumel, and it was just to me, it was like I woke up every day,
Hmm.
worked out, like
Hmm.
5:30 a.m., walked over to the gym, did an hour workout, walked down to the beach, and then like made sure sunrise, sunset as much as I could, and
Yeah.
just snorkel, go write my thoughts down. And again,
Absolutely.
and I feel like doing that came back as a better version of myself for my family.
Yeah.
And then again, more purpose and clarity for my business, for my family, and all the
Mhm.
things where I'm like, okay, like I kind of
Yeah.
had enough time with turning down the other noise that wasn't really kind of leading to
So
different
important. Yeah. And that's
awareness.
exactly how this business started. As I went through a divorce, was crushed, lost everything. I was just at a really, really low point.
Mhm.
And I would go to Tulum once a month and I would just do exactly that. I would cry, I would sweat, eat organic. And I created this structure of a long weekend of a Wednesday to Sunday, completely just investing in my healing.
Mhm.
And it worked so well that I came back and 6 months later helped set up my ex-husband's wedding. Like that's the amount of healing that was accessible to me
Mhm.
because it was true healing and it
Yeah.
was taking myself out of my environment. If I would have stayed in Dallas, gone through the motions, there was no way that I was going to be
Mhm.
to that level of healing. And
Well,
now, like we have the best co-parenting situation, we have the best energy between all of us, and it took me healing to
mhm.
be able to step into that space. And so it's true, like whenever you get the physical, the mental, and the spiritual, and then even the social health,
Mhm.
traveling with other people eventually, but it's very powerful.
Well, again, to all the reasons why these trips kind of make sense is like you're around like-minded people. So
Mhm.
I think
Which is fun.
as a provider that talks to patients all the time,
Mhm.
one of the one thing that really stresses me out when I see, you know, let's say wife and a husband. And again, whether it's the husband or the wife, whatever, if one is like, I really want to feel better, I need to like, I'm having this, and the other one's sitting across with their arms crossed, like
It's hard.
you're like, fudge, like
Yeah.
you're
Can be tough.
I know where potential like friction's gonna be.
Yeah,
Like this person, you want to get feeling better, but you know, this person might poo-poo on some of the things you need to do and it deters you away. And it's like,
Yeah.
okay, this shouldn't be the case. Like they should be your biggest advocate. They should support you. They definitely shouldn't.
But
And I
that
think
happens a lot. I've seen
all
a
the time.
pediatric chiropractic all the time.
time.
Dad's like, what? I'm like, listen, just give me 2 weeks.
Well, that's it. It's like, hey, look, like this isn't for you. This is for them. And I think I see that it's just, it is in society, I think it's a very negative aspect of society where, you know, even like pseudo friends, perimeter friends, like, you know, it's like that idea, like sometimes it's more important to keep those dreams and visions to yourself
Yes.
or to the people that you know you can share them with. Because if you all of a sudden have 10 negative voices, like that might take you away from your life's purpose.
Exactly.
And I think that you see that in healthcare. And again, on a health retreat, they're like everybody's going for the same reason, same intention. Like you're around like-minded people.
And what I love, what I've kind of adopted as our slogan is travel solo, but never alone. And so even if you are wanting to jump on a whim and take a trip, I love the idea of group travel and all of our trips. They're created in a way that you build your own experience. So if you just want to go and be able to sit and journal on the beach all day, or if you want to come do a Temazcal ceremony or a yacht tour or all these things that we offer, you're able to do that. But for me too, I've traveled around the world as a single woman, and there's been times where I haven't felt very safe. And so this, I think, is a really beautiful thing to offer women and men, but to be able to travel in a group of people, of like-minded people, where you get to wake up and do yoga, you get to share dinners together and do all that, but you also have the safety of a group travel.
Well, and then too, if you're like, hey, it's time for quiet, like you
Yeah.
can go get quiet.
Absolutely.
Hey, I want some social, and it's like the social is going to be more with like-minded people. It's like people that are your vibe and your energy and your vibration. You're not somebody that's like oil and water and like the negative, you know, like you're going to be around like-minded people, which does what? Lifts your vibration up.
And somewhere beautiful, like Maui.
So
Tell us about, okay, you have to tell me about the resort. I have never been, but you went on vacation.
My wife and I, we went May of 2023. We were wanting to do, you know, it was our 10-year anniversary in 2011, or sorry, 2012. And so like COVID was still kind of finishing up there. We're like, you know what, we don't want that trip to kind of have any, so we're like, we'll just delay it a year. We'll go our 10-year anniversary trip to Hawaii will be on year 11. So we went, I think it was like 10, 12 days. And again, I've been to Mexico, like a lot of the Caribbean places a ton. And I don't think I've ever been somewhere where it's not a day or two to unwind. Like it was
immediate.
Off the plane. Hey, this is nice. It's chill.
Yeah.
Like the spirit of, you know, kind of the spirit's pretty special there. And then, you know, we get to this resort where we stayed. And again, really, we were wanting to stay on the one part of the island, because Haleakala, like the volcano, the crater, go see the sunrise there, sunset. Again, we're like, hey, we want to start off and at least see that. So it would make sense. Like, let's stay there, you know, it's got food. The rest of the time, like we eat pretty clean. So I'm like, I kind of just want to go to Costco, get a kitchen and control my food for the rest of the trip. Cause that to me is usually like less stressful. Like knowing, you know, we'll go out to eat, but it's like easier to kind of like, hey, we'll breakfast and dinner, right? So my wife found this place. She's like, hey, this, you know, she's a designer. She has really specific, like, hey, it needs to look nice, look clean, but also kind of have like all the kind of feel to it. And it met her checkbox. I'm like, okay, this place is gonna be pretty nice. So we get there. Again, I just trust. I'm like, hey, I know where it's roughly at. And then again,
you show up,
the left, I just need to show up. I need to get us to the rental Jeep, drive us there. And I know it's gonna be, you know, the left brain, like, I just need to be close to Haleakala. Like I want to be close to what we're gonna wake up and do the next day. And get there, and it's just the first time, like, you got hammocks that are on like the hillside looking at the east shore. And you're just sitting there, tall pines, like just sitting there. And then you go to like the pool area and it looks over on the west shore now. Like you see kind of like bi-coastal views. Yeah, it's an 8 or 9 acre property and it's just beautiful. but it's like the first time I'm like, it didn't take me an hour, took me like 5 minutes of like being on this property where I'm like chill as a pill and like on vacation time.
That's so nice.
Trips to like Tulum, Okinawa, like it would take me like by day two
That's
or
a trip. Yeah,
by
there's an unwinding time for sure.
by day 2 or 3, I'm
Mhm.
unwinding, and then I'm like, oh man, I gotta pack my bags in like 2 or 3 days and go
Mhm.
home. Whereas this was like I was immediately on island time
Yeah.
within like minutes of being kind of out of the car.
Which is so important because it is a long flight from the US,
Mhm.
to be able to, and that's a big thing that our trips are really focused on are luxury, high-end, amazing properties. Like we have a hotel certification because we want just that.
Yeah.
So whenever you actually step off the plane and you go to these properties, you're instantly relaxed. And I think Hawaii is just, it's one of those places that
It's
it's
yeah.
bucket list, especially Maui.
You've heard lots of people like my grandma would like, oh, like Hawaii was her jam.
Yeah.
I mean, try to think. I mean, as a kid, she had like a thing for Tom Selleck. I remember, the one time she always just go on about like seeing Tom Selleck in Oahu. The one time, my grandpa would just roll his eyes.
I love it.
Anyway, so she just always go on about Hawaii. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, that seems so far for like what I could get in Mexico. And for me, like after
Yeah.
going through them, I love Mexico. I love Tulum. I love like that
Mhm.
area. But there's just
They're
something
different. It's
so
very different.
like
Yeah.
it's just like the spirit. And again,
Mhm.
very, we eat clean. The biggest thing I was nervous about was like, if we go out to eat, is it just gonna be like spam and eggs? Like,
Mhm.
I was worried, like, I'm like, I'm not eating that. Like,
Yeah.
we're pretty regimented about what we eat and
Uh-huh.
try to be clean. Like, well, we eat treats, but healthier options. Costco was like any Costco, which
Mhm.
again, super awesome. But even like the food, like
Oh,
people were so in touch. Like you go to like the corner store, right? And you think of
Mhm.
going to the corner store here, like it's not the best options if you want to buy toothpaste. You're not buying like the chemical free toothpaste.
Yeah.
You go into like the stores there,
Mhm.
they had like like they had more options than Whole Foods or the healthy options for
Of course.
toothpaste, sunscreen, like
Yeah.
snacks, like no dyes in your crappy foods. Like
It's a mecca for health. Like it
it's
really
like,
is
and I think
incredible.
that's the part where it's like for my wife and I, like they're so in tuned about what
Mhm.
nature intended for our bodies.
Yeah.
And that's the whole like spirit of Hawaii is like living within that. So, you don't take from it. And
Mhm.
so like, you delay, you put in the water and all that stuff, like you give back. You don't keep it, you don't take it.
Mhm.
Like it's all about giving back to
Yeah.
the
Which
nature
there's
of
a
the God.
frequency of healing whenever you're talking about giving. And that's even
Well, and
through like the
that's
earth and the land and
everything,
things like
right?
that. Yeah.
And that's the part to me where it's like, yeah, giving and asking for nothing in return. That to me
100%.
is like
It's a
probably
really
one of the
beautiful way to live.
most fulfilling thing is like just do it. Like I'm
Mhm.
just doing it because I want to help and I don't care. Don't need the recognition, just knowing like you're doing something good. And I think
Mhm.
that's the most special part we felt from our trip there is just,
Yeah.
and so we're like, okay, we need to go back.
Yeah.
And
I know whenever you reached out, I was like, oh my gosh, yes, naturally, you're the smartest people I've ever met. And I think that being able to share you and Dr. Nutt's wealth of knowledge with people to be in a beautiful space, but also to be able to take advantage. What we've really curated is educational tourism. And so every trip that you're taking, you're learning something about your body, about your health, about your wellness. So you
that's
guys are a natural fit.
so that's where it's like, okay, so now what do we do on this trip? Like obviously just Maui and the resort. I mean, they have meditation, they have a ton of like amenities there that are all geared towards wellness.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, there's a really cool IV clinic that I've already vetted out down the road. We want to do some IVs down the road. There's a lot of cool things down there, but it's like, hey, how do we show like, again, the left kind of nerdy aspect? I'm like,
Mhm.
show that your brain is going through a transformation. And I think that's the cool part. Is like, can we do a QEEG on you? Like, I want to show your brain is like in a
A pre and post.
completely
Yeah.
different rhythm for those who go on a trip. Like your brain on Dallas versus your brain on Maui. Like
I don't think we need to
this
mention
drug
that.
versus this drug. Which one's better for me?
Case studies. We're looking for people for a trial.
But it's like one of those things where it's like, so because again, if they see that and they're like, whoa, this part of my brain
Mhm.
is reduces my like cardiovascular risk, controls my blood
Mhm.
pressure, and it's much more active and healthier when I'm here and worse here, then maybe people would prioritize like, hey, as they're coming back from a trip, they're already planning their next trip. That
Of
was
course.
I had somebody, I don't know, I'm trying to remember was. I think it was Dr. Hollenmeyer. She was like, her thing when she would travel is like when they'd be coming back from a trip, they're already planning the next trip.
Well, they've done studies where you have X amount of dopamine increase when you have an upcoming trip. So I took that went a little too serious with it.
She travels a bit.
A little bit.
But it makes sense, like, because again, you're looking forward to something, even if it's like 6 months down the road. Like we were originally gonna try to do Maui in October, starting a new business, just a lot. And I'm like, hey, this isn't realistic to do this trip justice. So we pushed it to February.
With the whale season, come on.
Which I'm
if
like,
you haven't seen the whales, this very few times in my life where I have had chills over my entire body and just thinking like I feel fully alive is whenever you're in a boat next to a whale that's surfacing.
I think it was in 7th grade, we went up the St. Lawrence River where the Atlantic feeds into the St. Lawrence, and we saw a bunch of humpback whales, and it was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
But again, I was 7, so I don't really think I fully appreciated it. So
yeah.
And then that morning, so like I remember the largest living mammal on Earth is a blue whale. And so I did a project on, I think in 6th or 5th grade, and like they're very hard to see. That morning we got there, like, hey, you guys missed by like 30 minutes of blue whale sighting.
Oh,
I'm like, what?
No way.
So like it's pretty memorable, that experience going up like through Quebec and up to St. Lawrence. I'm like, then we get to Maui, and there's a guy kind of running the meditation, and I'm like, look, we don't want to do like the touristy things. Like if I gotta go hike and like get beat up on some trails, like I want to kind of experience like things that are not touristy. I want to connect to nature. So he's like, hey, I know it's not the time of the year to do it. Like whale season is over, but come back on whale season and just be in the water. Like, don't be next to but just be in the water. You'll hear their calls and their vibration through the water. And it's like,
I got chills just thinking about it.
And that was kind of him, like telling us, like, he's like, I go on my surfboard and I just lie on my back.
Oh, come on. That's like ultimate sound healing.
And he's like, and that's what he had a few, right? And then there's he's like, he also said the same thing. He's like, go up, there's this valley, hike up, there'll be the touristy spot where the trail stops, like keep going and just hike as far as you want. And so we did it, and it was cool, but we got young kids, and there's just, hey, we're gonna pick this watering hole, and there's like a local like couple there, and it was really nice. And then a group of like 10 or 12 people from one group of tourists show up, like, yeah, like we're done. But it was really special because you're like, in the valley, mountain just sitting up there, and you're just like just chill, and you can just tell like it's just quiet. But this other guy, the same guy who did the whale watching, he's like, come back, encourage you to get in the water and just feel and hear their calls as they migrate through. And then he said, same thing, go and hear the valley speak to you. You'll go up and there'll be these little like pools as the water kind of trickles down. And there'll be these rocks that are like kind of like an inch submerged in water. Go lie on your back and do a meditation on it. So that's on my list. But
and that's a really cool thing about your retreat too, is we're doing everything not touristy. Like everything's going to be laying in rivers and meditating and the whales and things like that.
Try to do things that like get you connected, and then there's options for touristy things, but it's like that stuff's easy to find already. So trying to help you find the things that are off the touristy like checklist.
And what's cool is one of our contractors who works for Wonderlearn, she lives on Maui. And so she's already given.
And this is the nice part. So I just kind of get to go like, hey, we got a checklist. And
exactly. You show up, make money, and come have a vacation.
Well, it's one of those things where it's like, and again, people get to experience something. It's like you're still spending money on a vacation like you would anywhere else, but you're getting healing aspects to your trip. And again, I think that's the part is like showing like, look, it doesn't take 3 weeks away. Like you can get to a point that's very therapeutic. Really quickly around the right people,
the right environment,
with the right environment, and again the right mindset. And I think that's the part that was so intriguing about kind of the Wonderlearn kind of model. And then too, it's like patients need it more than ever.
And we're hosting over Valentine's Day, so we're going to be,
and it's Valentine's Day.
So couples are welcome. We'll be dropping a couples discount.
It is Valentine's Day. I know you messaged like, hey, just I don't know if you messaged like, did you plan that? I'm like, I'm not.
But what better way to spend Valentine's Day than I booked us a trip to Hawaii?
Going to Hawaii would be something I would promote for Valentine's Day. The whole like Hallmark aspect of it, I'm like, But a cool trip like this,
Hawaii.
I could get behind. To me, I'm like, God, don't tell me to be romantic. I'm like, I'll make dinner on my own.
Trips, yeah,
But
those are romantic.
that again, it's kind of cool. And to me,
That's
I'm like,
fun.
it's honestly, it's connecting. So if you go there with a spouse, like,
Yeah.
again, it's one of those things. I'm excited. So I know I want to be respectful of your time.
We covered a lot
We
today.
talked a lot all over different places. You have a book coming out.
I do have a book coming out.
Again,
Yeah,
not
it's
sure yet
exciting.
date. Hopefully
In the fall. It's
in the-
finished. We're going through the editing and publishing process, but
Okay.
it's a 500-page
Just a-
research-based, casual, light reading
Perfect.
for natural preconception, everything from detoxing from birth control to getting pregnant, staying pregnant, pregnancy, how to live an optimal pregnancy, what that looks like, and then into postpartum, into motherhood.
That's awesome. And it's gonna be called
Mother,
Awesome.
really creative.
Well, the book is not out yet, but she told me when she has more information on where we can send that link for you guys to find the book. I mean, I'll have a few copies over my shoulder
Mhm.
and have at the office, but I'll make sure we provide a link on our social media this when it's dropped to help promote it, because I think it's going to be, again, it's a very needed area to help empower women. Yeah, that's so awesome. Mother, and then
Mother. And the next one will be called Baby.
baby. Hey, I think it's catchy and it's simple. And I think
It's easy. Yeah.
yeah, a good English teacher taught me how do you say more with less. And I think mother is simple. You can't make it any simpler,
All
but
you
it's
need.
gonna say a lot.
Yes, exactly.
And it's gonna be a lot of good kind of empowering. Like it's not gonna be it's research based.
It's all research based. Yeah.
I mean, yeah, so that's right. Again, that's my thing is like
Back it up with the research.
back it up with
Yeah.
research. A lot of times, like, and I think it's there, but it's just a matter of like, hey,
Mhm.
if you have it there, it makes it a lot easier to use and to use as a tool. And again, like I have my first chiropractic, and again, how I got into this is kind of different. Sports injuries, but I was having migraines.
Yeah.
I think at like 10 or 11, I would get
Which
them
is debilitating.
debilitating. And for me, I was missing time on the ice. I was like be driving to hockey. I would get the spots in my eyes, like, oh, I'm gonna have a horrible migraine, and I would potentially miss a AAA hockey game. And so my mom's like, you gotta go see the chiropractor. And went from having them like 3-4 times a month to once a year.
Yeah.
And the cool part is then doing more on the functional med side to like once every 6 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Again, it's just to
What
me
a
that
gift we have. Like it's a true gift, the things that we know.
it's again, I feel very fortunate to have been exposed to this paradigm into health, and that's my foundation. And again, like we said, it's not that kind of Western and medicine isn't a thing that's necessary, but it's like having this as our foundation to kind of drive decision making to me makes sense. And then, hey, look, I have something I need a medication or
Of course. Yeah.
crisis care makes sense. But this is kind of like, hey, food is medicine, movement is medicine.
Yes.
It makes a lot more sense. And I think that to me is where I feel like very fortunate to kind of been pushed down this trajectory and
Same.
love it. So anyways, well, I appreciate you jumping on. This was short notice. And book will be out. We'll pass that along. Wanderlearn, the Nest in Addison. Are you gonna have a location at this? Okay.
Yeah, we'll have two. So we'll have like our regular Addison, and then we'll shift chiropractic and a few other businesses over to the new location.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I appreciate you guys for listening. And if you have any questions, please, you can reach out on our podcast page and we'll follow up.
Bye.